verdissait. Coucou, voici le printemps. Coucou,
All right,
le
I'm Steve
soleil
Sando, and welcome
brillait.
back to Napa Citizen Roundtable. And if you're new, I own Rancho Gordo in town, and I'm just a frustrated citizen, and I like to talk to people that are more educated, often smarter, and always more interesting than me about local issues, because I'm learning a lot of things. And we'll start out, I want to introduce Charlie. You want to introduce yourself and tell us about...
I'm Charlie Toledo. I'm the director of Susquehanna Intertribal Council. It's a Native American organization based here in Napa County since 1972. And then it went through a 10-year hiatus and reorganized in 1992. I've been the executive director since then, and a lot of issues have been involved, in local politics, land use plans since about 1985.
Wow. And thank you for all you're doing. And Beth?
I'm Beth Nelsen. I'm a local documentary filmmaker. I was born and raised in Napa, but I left when I was 20 just to kind of see different places. I've been back in Napa since 2012. A lot of my work, I do a lot of social justice kind of issues around my filmmaking. And I'm really pleased to be here with you.
Great, good to have you. And Gary?
Thanks.
I'm Gary Margadant. I live up on Mount Veeder Road, and I've been active up here in local issues and in fire departments. I was a volunteer fire department for 7 years, and so I watch over the issues that take place on the Mount Veeder, Dry Creek, Wall Road, Redwood Road area, and we do it through the Mount Veeder Stewardship Council. So there's always something interesting going on everywhere. And so sometimes you have to filter it down so that you can talk about it effectively.
I agree. And I should just say, so everyone knows that Gary and I are neighbors, not next door neighbors, but I'm on the mountain too. And so what we're gonna do is divide it into 3 different subjects. And we're gonna start with Charlie. We're gonna hopefully stick to around 10 minutes and make this limited to 30 minutes in total. But Charlie, what's on your mind today? What should we be talking about?
Well, I think what I've been seeing, because people are, the citizens of Napa County are becoming more aware of the issues that we talk about: land use, water, fire, but development. So in the year 2000, that's when I was just shortly, like 8 years after Susquehanna had started, the city of Napa was doing a 2020 plan. So this was 20 years ago. And they invited all the citizens to come to the table and listen to the meetings. And the issues that we were concerned about, not sprawling, but interweaving and diversity, mixed house use, mixed lot use, and creating urban cores to every part of the city. Every neighborhood would have an urban core and then a concentric spiral out, so that every neighborhood, like Browns Valley, downtown, Alta Heights, all the different neighborhoods, I think there's about 10 of them, would have an urban core, which would give all the essential: a gas station, grocery store, hardware store, a post office, whatever was considered essential need, kind of a commercial core to every circle, and then, mixed housing use throughout the neighborhood. So people could walk to their essential services. And then also part of that plan, that's the plan that we introduced. The city did not introduce it. They had 2 scenarios. One was to sprawl to heaven, and the other one was to build up, the downtown sections and sprawl to heaven. And so we came up, and Judy Irvin was the architect. She's retired now. She's an urban planner and architect, and was the Western region planner for California, Oregon, New Mexico, Arizona, Washington, and Hawaii. So she was the historical oversight architect for the federal government for about 10 years before she retired. Incredible expertise. So she was the one who came up with this idea. She really understood urban planning around the human need, because the way that we design communities now, and she really explained to me and educated me, this was 20 years ago. So I've been able to utilize that information in all of the venues that I speak about. So the same thing's happening. They didn't do the plan. What the city planner at that time did, they accepted our plan because that was the one that won the public vote. The public was at the table for about a year. And then the public went home, and the city planners took it over, and they created loopholes in the plan, this cotton circular design plan, rather than a Euclidean grade, which is that kind of a grid. You just put this grid and you overlay that into a river valley. It's absurd, but that's what we've done. And then, so we have what the city's planners wanted 20 years ago, which was a high-rise downtown sprawling to the very limits and beyond of Napa City. It's a horrible, horrible design, and it forces everybody into their cars, unsafe traffic patterns for anybody who might want to be a pedestrian. And so right now, the city, the county actually is in another plan, and citizens need to know about this. It's not in the planning division now, it's mental health services that has taken it over. They did a community-wide focus groups in every community in Napa County, including all the watersheds in remote Pope Valley, where this land project, Arbor Land Project is, but also up in Mount Veeder, much like the watershed plan that was developed 20 years ago through the RCD. So they did the same thing. And now what's happening is through mental health services, there's 5 full-time employees that are working to make sure that the citizens stay engaged. The focus groups, for the year-long focus groups that happened multiple times, and most of you didn't know about this, but people, the community leaders did, and we were all at the table. Most of the stakeholders were at the table, and every meeting would start with who's not at the table. And then we would all, on our own time mostly, go out and get those people to the table. So this process is ongoing.
How recently was this?
This year, it's still happening. It was last year, it just finished. There was 2 years of focus groups, the focus groups I'm talking about that replicated and that was, I'm trying to remember who the person, I'm really bad with names. Erin Wischushofsson, she works for the county, and then Jennifer Swift had been one of the lead people, but for health reasons, she's not. But like I said, there's 5 full-time employees, and they are keeping, so we were having quarterly meetings that everybody identified the need and what was the priority need. The priority need was inclusiveness and diversity. This is Napa County doing this. This is already happening. It's in process. And so the reason I want to share that today is because a lot of you guys that see yourselves as activists and informed, you didn't know about it. You weren't at the table. I actually volunteered to phone 10 groups, get their input into the plan, and then have encouraged them to come to the meetings. But mostly it's people like me that are directors of COPE and all the different organizations, and the mental health employees that are doing this are all very, very well informed, and they are deeply committed to diversity and inclusiveness, and economic, gender, ethnic inclusiveness. So what the plan is now, and I've shared with them how this 2020 plan failed and why, because I was at the table, I watched it go down, and there wasn't enough long-term community involvement. People don't realize that really to change things, you have to do policy work. You have to change the policy. You have to have laws to back up what you're talking about. And that's boring. It's tedious. It requires incredible resiliency and stamina. So now with this 5 incredibly brilliant women working for mental health services, engaging the community, everybody, all these, I think there was about 100 people at the meetings. And now there's about, average meeting is 50 to 70 people at the meetings, quarterly meetings. So we all created our area of expertise. Mine is education and curriculum. And then there's a group of people that are all working to further those goals. What do we want to do? How are we going to do it? And then measuring it on a quarterly basis, our progress. That's happening right now in Napa County.
And do they have the ear of the board to create ordinances that reflect what's happening?
They're paid employees from Napa County. So,
well, I mean, I'm cynical. Like, I've never even heard of this, and I'm a citizen. I'm not an activist. I have to make that clear. I'm turning into one, but I'm not one.
It was, because before you could post something in Napa Register and everybody would see it and know about it, Napa doesn't have a central clearing ground. So I think Gary's going to talk about communication a little bit. And I think that's one of the issues is how do we communicate with each other on a mass level? Most of the community leaders, I have to tell you, there's not one organization that wasn't represented in this clearinghouse.
Good for Napa. Listen, I'm the first to complain. I want to give applause.
You weren't at the table. This was 2 years ago that it started, and now it's the working stage. But that focus group stuff, that went on for 2 years. They were advertising on the radio, the newspaper, they were putting flyers up in the community, and then advocates like myself, experienced, weathered advocates were out advocating to our group. A lot of people say, oh, I'll come to that meeting. Oh, it's a 2-hour meeting on Tuesday. Can't make it. And that's what you hear endlessly from probably 100 people. And if we get one person to respond out of 100, that's considered a success.
But in fairness, I think the county's really bad at messaging. And this is something good they're doing, but I didn't know anything about it. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
you
get
do.
access to the board, and there's a gatekeeper. I can't remember what her name is, who won't let you through. I mean, so it goes both ways. People are disinterested, but I think get someone like me who has somehow gotten people to eat dry beans and be happy with it. Like, I do have a few talents, and one of them maybe is persuading people to do things they don't want to do. Yeah. Sorry, Gary, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask a question. Where, if this is something the county is doing, where can I find some information about it? Is it on the county website?
I believe it is, and I'm so bad. I think it's called the 2050 or 2040 plan. It's the same kind of thing. The focus group part is over, but the meetings are always open. And like I said before, we went into the work phase of the focus groups. It was a 2-year process. And Steve, if you mostly we're notified by emails, and like I said, like COPE and News. I'm just trying to think of all the organizations that are there. All of the county employees, but it's sanctioned by the Board of Supervisors.
No, I don't necessarily need to be in the focus group. I mean, I'm sure other people are representing me on some level, but
the rural areas were not represented. I worked really hard to get more rural representation. I was calling people I know in Pope Valley, up on Mount Veeder. I have a lot of friends on Mount Veeder. Gary, I don't think we're on the same wavelength or something, but I think the RCD was there. My purpose in that group was to bring the environmental factor into that urban involvement. And then the issues of water.
I think what we're doing right now is sharing a lot of information and bringing the awareness to all of us about this type of thing. And I want to congratulate Steve on doing this very thing. And that's really what we need is more communication. So
I think the county, whatever, they're not good at it. So we can help.
That would be something, we would like to promote it, that this is inside Vision 2050. And so we'd like to put it out on the eyes of Napa that these things are taking place, and that it would certainly behoove you to participate. And, and there's other avenues where participation is being sought, so all of that can come out.
And this isn't fair, I'm sure, and I kind of said something like this last time too. The impression is the Board of Supervisors are at wine events hosted by big vendors who are pushing the buttons, and that's all they're doing. And the fact that this is going on is like, I think they're nuts for not learning how to communicate and making sure there's more happening in Napa than fighting about the ag preserve or trying to degrade it. We got other things going. So anyway, I think that's great. Charlie, do you want to sum up so we can move on?
I thought I summed up. I thought we were into Gary's communication piece.
Oh, no. Not yet.
No. You've still got the floor if you have something else you want to add. And
so I think what you're talking about, we can keep bashing the county and the supervisors, but really communication is a community-wide effort. And because we're in such changing times, before the newspaper was where everybody got their information. I could put, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, I could put an announcement in the newspaper and we would get hundreds of feedback. You put something in newspaper today, it's like, well, one person calls you. So there is not a central venue, except for Nixle now, but there's not a central avenue to disperse information. And all of the community-based organizations in Napa County, and there's hundreds, have the same complaint. There is, and that's not the supervisor's responsibility. I agree, they should be more available to their constituency, and they are not. And I have brought this up many times at those meetings with supervisors present. So the summation is that everybody has to do the research. You can go to those websites, the information is there. And if I could remember what the name of it is, it might not be 2050, but it's something like the 2020 plan. But this time it's not just Napa City, it's Napa County.
That's great.
And so I will get that information to you, Steve, and you can disperse it to your awakening fellows.
Yes,
that would be lovely.
Great. No, I'm so negative and so critical, and I love hearing this. This makes me really happy that
I'm a solution-based person. I'll complain for about 2 minutes, and then we got to look at solutions.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. All right, so Beth, I was going to ask you. You just went on a field trip. It sounds like that was really interesting, and you shared it with some of your friends on Facebook. And I just thought it would be great to have
my field trip.
Well, down when you went when you were filming, what you just did.
Oh, yes. I thought you meant fleeing the smoke, and I was
No, not that. That's a different.
okay. As you were talking about communication, I was thinking how there's no focus around. There's no information being spread about the harm of smoke, so that's why we left. But
No, I've been wondering that too, because
so when we get to Gary's piece around communication, I
Yeah.
think it would be interesting to hear why we're not hearing about health. So anyway, yes, I took a field trip with David Campbell. I had asked him, what kind of propelled him to get into this.
and who's David Campbell for people who don't know too?
David Campbell is relatively new to me. He is running for council member District 2. So he's a very passionate, he's an activist. He's a hardcore ally to, POC, LGBTQ, like he's just an all around great guy. And so he kind of had mentioned the islands, and I'm thinking islands, it's such an interesting term, islands,
Sounds
and,
good.
Yeah, and it's funny because I love that Charlie brought up the diversity and inclusion, because I remember having a meeting with Jennifer Swift 2 years ago, and at that time I had a newish baby, and this idea of like video series for diversity and inclusion around Napa. So but the way I share information is through my filmmaking, is through video, media, and there's only so much time that I have, but I felt really drawn in walking through these neighborhoods, particularly in West Pueblo, Linda Vista, and talking to the residents to share their stories. And as I was doing that work and driving through other parts of Napa, you can see the green signs with the county logo. And on those streets, there are so many people with their, displaying their mayoral candidate preferences, and yet none of them can actually vote for their preferred candidate. So I actually realized, I know people that live here and they have these signs. And so I called them and I said, hey, did you know that you have a sign and you can't vote? And it's like, it was news to them. So I know that these islands have been around for a long time. I know there's been a lot of discussion for a long time, but at the same time, there's still a lot of people who don't realize.
And to help benefit everybody, what is an urban island like this?
Yeah, so it's the way it's been explained to me. So it's Charlie might know better how it all came to be, but as far as you think way back to when they were kind of zoning. And so as far as like the city sprawling, and then these protected, county that then was given to various, that's the other interesting thing is a lot of them are renters. So you talk about property, it's not as if these people that live there will have a lot of say, because they're not the owners, they're the renters. So particularly in this West Pueblo, it has a much higher percentage of tenants versus being an owner. But
Gary, we're gonna ask something?
Yeah, I was going to say the islands are actually areas inside the city that are in the unincorporated county. In other words, these islands have never become part of the city.
Yes, exactly.
And the city has not annexed them and using LAFCO, they have not annexed these portions. So they, and of course, part of the problem is that a lot of the infrastructure in these islands, the curbs and the streets and stuff like that, the city, if they annex them, would have to upgrade them and bring them all up to the same. And I think that's an impediment.
And before you go any further, what's LAFCO for people who don't know?
Pardon me?
And before you go, LAFCO, so a lot of these people aren't in on this, so we need to make sure they know.
Oh, LAFCO.
Yeah, what is LAFCO for people who don't know?
It's an agency that was formed by the state of California and required it to be in the county that would essentially bring issues between the cities and the county when land use issues were developing, like water and sewer and things. They each have districts that they our jurisdiction over, and sometimes one of them wants to intrude the other. That's where the annexation comes in. And so they would take a county land and annex it and bring it into the city. But it has to go through LAFCO now. It can't be hidden in a back room stuff, and they do it and they come out and they say, oh, well, we made this decision. This LAFCO allows the all of the residents to be part of this if they want to get involved. So that's how it works.
All right, so Beth, but I want to hear the rest of Beth's tour.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, yeah, so the local agency formation commission is, I think that's what it stands for. But the Napa LAFCO website actually they've done a really great job. Like, all the information is organized so you can see the statistics. There's questions of taxes. So they've done, kind of prorating, and, there's a lot of good information on the Napa County LAFCO website if people want to learn more. But I think what got me is for me, it's kind of that personal piece. It's the my mom likes to tell people I fight for the underdog in my work, and I suppose there's some truth to that. And it's just, having been a marginalized person myself, I think I got into activism in 1994 when I came out of the closet and realized, oh wow, I'm a second-class citizen in my own country, which I know you can relate to, Steve. So I think that's kind of what propelled my personal activism. But then David invited me to come on the tour of the West Pueblo Island along with Julio Soriano, and it was
Julio.
Julio, yes, now Julio. But it was just a really good thing to do, just to, most of us don't get out and walk the neighborhoods and talk to the people, and I did a bit of that in campaigning for others, but I think that's a really good exercise to do. And I can tell you that, I learned a lot in just hearing people's stories, and that what made the video was that woman who was talking about her water rates. And that's actually how David Campbell got into the islands. He was, for some reason, reviewing water rates all around the city and the county, and he saw this big disparity. He thought, oh, what's going on here? And so that kind of propelled his own inspiration into the islands. But we talked to that woman who was saying that her water bill, I think she said, was $270 for 2 months, and then her parents lived 6 blocks down, not in the island, and it was like $80 for 2 months. So it's those kind of disparities that really speak to people who might not, it's a bigger challenge for some people. It's not, there are people in Napa, and I feel like, I don't want to go there, but like the majority of Napa, I've heard people say, oh, we don't have hungry people in Napa. We don't have, and we know that's not true. And I just really think that, why I said yes to doing this particular video is because I felt like it gave a good insight into something that a lot of people didn't know about. And I don't know what the future holds as far as what our elected officials will do with this information, and if there will be action, if there will be more outreach. I think really what we need is more outreach in talking to the people that live there. But then there's also the issue of them being tenants, and therefore should they have a say in the houses that they rent.
Right. Well, that's if I'm a renter and I live in one of these islands, is there any advantage to living in an island as a renter?
Well, that's the other thing that David brought up, which really was one of the more egregious things that he had shared with me, was that I guess that the tenant rights are better in the city. So if you're a city resident and something's wrong with your house, they have to fix it. I don't know all of the extent of that, because I know there's
more lax.
Yeah, we have slumlords in Napa as well, in the city. But I guess, yeah, it's a bit more lax, whereas they don't have to find you alternative housing if your house becomes unlivable. It's just, that kind of made me think, that piece of like, well, you know, if you don't have those basic rights, that's a big deal. But we didn't delve too deeply into that. I try to make the videos short because I know that people's attention span nowadays, you got to be quick, and
I think it's worth looking into and
yeah,
going deeper. I'll put the link to your
sure.
video below it on the YouTube page of this video so that people can
for
see
sure.
the video.
Yeah.
Any follow-up information we want to have from the others too, we can always add to the information. But you, in your walk though, we're gonna go close, but you actually met some people that wanted to remain unincorporated. Is that correct?
I didn't personally, only in the Facebook world, since posting that video. But I was told that there are people that have this kind of attitude of like, you know, I don't know what it is, if it's like the feeling of, I don't know if it's like a uniqueness thing. I really don't know. And I don't want to speak for stuff that I don't know about, but I did hear that there are people who wish to have it that way. However, in West Pueblo, Linda Vista, I had a woman say, you know, what do you mean I'm the county? I can't grow an orchard here. So it's like, it's not like it's a huge plot of land where you're enjoying, you know, county divisions of land and planning where you can, you know, have a farm and a ranch or whatever. So she didn't understand why her tract house, which is like everybody else's and 6 blocks away where it's city, why is she county?
Yeah, no, and it's sort of like calling, I hate to go back to it, but a gift shop in a winery is not agriculture. And it's sort of like, okay, let's be real. She lives in the city of Napa, even though it's unincorporated. You're in Napa.
Yeah.
So let's stop playing
You
games
mentioned
with semantics.
Yes, you mentioned earlier our elected finding loopholes, and that's a subject that has been just loopholed the heck out of to get the food and the that's a whole other issue.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. We're gonna ask you back about that because I think it's worth following up on. It's a really interesting thing. But I mean, it seems to me maybe the people that want to stay unincorporated can subsidize the water bills for the people.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think there could be some easier solutions. But it just one in particular, that West Pueblo, Linda Vista, where there's close to 1,400 people living there, which is, you know, almost half of the entire population of the islands. I think that needs to be taken into consideration.
And they have no council person or mayoral representation. Is that right?
No, they're not city.
So
they're not part of the city.
Kind of amazing. That's fascinating. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
All right, Gary, let's talk about communications.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'm been concerned about communications because of where I live. I live up in the mountains. I live in a mixed conifer, you know, deciduous forest, and I've always had fire trouble. The 2017 Tubbs fire evacuated me out completely, and it came down the hill, over the hill from Sonoma, and came down across my road here and burned the other side of my road. It only burned on the ground, but still it was burning houses of my neighbors further up on Mount Veeder, because I'm at the 4,000 block, and people, you know, people down in the 3,000, the 2,000 block were more impacted because the fire came through that area much stronger. So that's always been a concern with me, and it's always been, how do I find out about these fires and keep up with them? Is there a system that notifies me right away, that wakes me up and tells me that, you know, I'm in danger? And this is something that's been going on because the Napa County Sheriff and the Office of Emergency Services, the OES in Napa County, you know, try to get out and send you a Nixle message, all right? And I've looked at the Nixle messages that the county sends out, and I've compared them to the Nixle messages that the sheriff in Sonoma sends out. And there's a light and a night and day difference. The Sonoma, you can actually go ahead and subscribe to the Nixle message in Sonoma. It's free. And then you can see what they do over there. They've got some really good people in that sheriff's department that are really good communicators. And so you see the messages are not short, but they're very long, and they explain a lot of things about arrests, about fires and stuff. And it's a lot better. Also, when they do evacuations, they give you a map and they show you where the evacuation is. That's something that the Napa County does not do, and the sheriff doesn't do. All of the sheriff wants to do is coming up. He's proposing things, but one is the high-low siren. But he has to drive a vehicle through the area with this siren that goes woo, 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 you know, and it goes down the road. And so you're supposed to know what that is. And so those are some of the issues. And then another thing came up, and that was there's a proposal from Chris Canning, who's the mayor of Calistoga, but not acting in that capacity, but as a president of the an organization, a company that's trying to establish monopoles throughout Napa County, and then put aside this monopole will be used for a telecommunications effort, you know. But it's found out, when we found out what he was proposing, he only was proposing the poles for in the Napa Valley. And I'm going, well, that didn't do us any bit of good. I mean, it didn't do any of the Mayacamas Mountains. It didn't do anything for Berryessa Highlands, Berryessa Estates, Spanish Flat, you know, Gordon Valley, Circle Oaks, Howell Mountain. There's so much that they didn't do, because the proposal was to put up telecommunication towers, and he was going to make money off of that. And he would, but they were going to put them on county property along the roads. And I thought, well, I think the county should get a better deal on this. They should have some of these poles and these sirens put up so that they can warn people. But as you can see in the recent fires, Berryessa could have used them. I mean, Berryessa Highlands lost 93 houses, but they had no sirens. They didn't have any of that. And
so you're saying that they should go bigger if they're going to do this. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. And you know, it's a proposal to the county to use the county property. And if the county says yes, then they're going to go ahead and put these monopoles on the right of way. But they
who's
weren't
paying
planning
for it? The county?
No, this
Oh, the entrepreneur, the company.
yeah, the entrepreneur.
Oh.
And the entrepreneur behind this is the very rich Brazilian who has proposed this. And I just want to see the county have a focus that's more on, you know, the communications during a disaster, and notification of people up here. You know, you have to have cell phone service. That's essentially what it is. I'm on cell phone service right now. So we want to see the county do something that's a little bit better. Now, a lot of fire safe councils have said they want the sirens, but the funny thing is that none of the sirens were proposed for any of the fire safe council areas. And I'm just, you know, they think it's a good idea, but you know, our supervisor, mine is Diane Dillon, and you know, there's Alfredo Pedrosa, and let's see, Brian Gregory. All of those, you know, have areas up in here in the county, and they should be pushing this. But I would like to, you know, force the county or suggest to the county that they do something that's a little more inclusive.
Would you be willing to write a letter or something and follow up with us on what happens? I know you're not going to get a response from a couple of them, but
well, I have in some way, because I speak to them in public comment, and one of the supervisors found it very upsetting. So
they found what upsetting? That you suggested they do more for this?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. It was just very interesting conversation. But I mean, I would, I would like to see the focus of the Board of Supervisors change. That's more inclusive about what's going on in the unincorporated area. That's what was important. That's what was really important, especially the mountain communities and the rural communities that I mentioned. So,
yeah, it's interesting. The Napa Nixle thing seems to be. I'm going to give you a headline, and you can look it up. Which it would be great if it was more detailed. I don't know. The question is that the sheriff's job? I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I don't know. But
no, I mean, it's just a matter of if does the sheriff, how effective is your communication? Could you improve it? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, is issues around the county and how you could improve them. And they could certainly improve that.
I know people would volunteer to help. Like there's that, I can't remember her name and I'm so embarrassed. There's a wonderful woman in Sonoma who does nothing but do updates about the fire. Do any of you know that? I'm going to put her name and I'll put a link in there. You can be a friend with her or follow her on Twitter. It's like to the minute, and every day she's doing a summation in a way that really the government should be doing.
And we could also put in there the link to the Nixle in Sonoma, where you could actually look at and see, because the difference between the amount of communication is just night and day. The maps for the evacuation are so nice to have because they show you what districts and what areas are closed. And,
well, sure. And if you don't know where they're talking about, you hear Monticello Road at so-and-so. It's like, well, I don't know where so-and-so is. And it's like, oh my, I mean, it's really not that helpful if it's an obscure small street is where the cutoff is. It would be really nice to have more information.
And that's what I mean. And it would be just very pleasant if it was more inclusive, that people could understand it. And, with electronic communications and the cell phone, I think it's very doable, very, very doable.
Yeah.
So there are maps like that are actually global, and I'll put the link on. We watch those maps that show where the fires are, where the active fires are, where the evacuated mandatory in topo maps, and we've had access to that for the last 2 fires. So I was informing people, last year up in Snell Valley, a remote eastern part of Hope Valley, Napa County, northeastern ridge. They were being told to evacuate, but the Nixle wasn't telling them where, because everybody had to determine for themselves what the safe route was to exit. And so accessing those maps, I was saying, you need to go north. You need to go north on 29 and then go east. Actually, over the mountains into Williams was where they had to evacuate from, because they couldn't come into Lake County. They couldn't come into Calistoga. So those maps are there, and I'll send you that link. We looked at those 3 or 4 times a day this last episode, the last 3, and it tells you the smoke, the fire, active fires, mandatory evacuation, and it's in a topo map, and it's any place in the world. So you can, twitch yourself into Napa County, and there it is.
Another map to check every day. I've been on Purple Rain doing the air quality. So.
But that's, the level of understanding is quite a bit greater when you have the map and it shows you where to go. Right. And I think that's an excellent idea that, you have there, Charlie, and that you're doing. I think that's just absolutely great.
Well, it's not my idea.
That's just what people need to know, right. And Nixle can be that way. I'll give you a couple of links where you can go to see what Sonoma has done, and you can see the map that they have there.
I see that.
Yeah. And well, I mean, other people who are watching this little confab, might want to go ahead and look at it too.
But it's big. It's not little. It's huge. What I'm doing. And with that, I think we should sum it up for this week. I want all 3 of you to come back and talk about whatever you want. If anyone out there has subjects you want to talk about, I'm totally open. And in the comments section, we'll be open unless you're rude or obscene. We're leaving them up. So if you heard something you don't agree with, I'd love to have a discussion. I think that's the way to do this. So it's all about bringing up subjects. I feel our leadership is failing us and not bringing up the subjects we need to talk about. They want to cut ribbons at Rotary Parks, which is a good thing to do, but we've got a lot of serious issues and we need to be our own advocates. It's kind of my platform right now. So I thank you all, and we will see you next time on Napa Citizen Roundtable. Okay, bye. Thanks.
Coucou, les rameaux verdissent. Coucou, voici le printemps. Coucou, le beau soleil brille. Coucou, et les yeux des filles. Coucou, en font tout autant. Que faites-vous encore à sommeiller? Éveillez-vous, éveillez-vous, le monde est transformé. Coucou, ouvrez-moi bien vite. Coucou, mon cœur vous invite. Coucou, il faut nous aimer.